Hey, this is some good news from my neck of the woods up in Hertford County where I grew up. And I grew up in a small town of Ahoskie. There's in Murfreesboro, there's Chowan College. It's now called Chowan University. With all this removing statues and Confederate, statues, everything, put on that. As I said, my position is, they were the bad guys. But it is history. Put it all in the museum. Remove the Confederate monuments from public squares and shove it in a museum. Be done with it. I think that's the sensible thing. Um, but I hope that the right wing will have a fit over what happened in Chowan College. I never expected that from Chowan College. But the Jesse Helms Center, the name is being removed to be replaced with the Hawks Athletic Center. If you don't know who Jesse Helms was, this man was a vile, racist, homophobic jerk. The man was a fan of dictatorships around the world. He was a supporter of every cruel policy, ranging from the drug war to crime bills I mean, you name it. If it was a way to subjugate and inflict rights and take away rights from people and to silence people, Jesse Helms was the face of that. Jesse Helms was well. To quickly surmise what about Jesse Helms. Jesse Helms was a U.S. senator, sir, from 1973 to 2003. But prior to that, after World War II, he got a job with the Raleigh Times. I believe he was like a sports editor, and then he got involved with politics in 1950 by supporting Willis Smith and getting involved in the Democratic primaries, because Willis Smith was a segregationist, and the Democratic senator at the time, Frank Porter Graham, was a New Deal liberal who was an advocate of equality for racial equality for African Americans. Jesse Helms got involved, and he helped bring down Frank Porter Graham. During the 1950s, he was the chair of the North Carolina Bankers Association, and he served in the Raleigh City Council, and he was a well-known segregationist at the time. The difference between him being a segregationist and, let's say, George Wallace of Alabama, the governor of Georgia, is that with all the faults and the racism that existed with all these segregationists, as Democrats at that time, at least, without making excuses for them, some of the economic programs which were race neutral benefited African Americans. But the fact that they supported segregation makes them evil. Jesse Helms didn't even have the courtesy to support race neutral social programs. Jesse Helms was to the right of even many Republicans in the 50s and 60s on when it came to issues like corporatism. Well, Jesse Helms had a job at WRL Channel 5 in Raleigh, I believe it was called Viewpoint, where he did commentaries every night. And with the commentaries he would do, it was pretty much, Martin Luther King was a communist, is he communist? These long hair hippie degenerates, and then the communists, and these rioters, and all these uppity colored people trying to take away the rights of white people. That basically was Jesse Helms. And some of the Republicans Party people today, when discussion Jesse Helms come along and somebody said Jesse Helms is a racist, they get freaking triggered. Jesse Helms was a bigot. He was the alt right before there was the alt right. I mean, he was basically. I mean, he was basically just he was basically an unpolished but more politically successful Richard Spencer of his day, in a way. Well, in 1972, he ran for the U.S. Senate. He changed party affiliation from Democrat to Republican. Southern strategy. And he ran for the Senate and he barely won against Nick Galifianakis. Um, and during his career as a senator, he was he's as I said, he supported all these reactionary policies, every corporatist policy, every welfare cut scheme, anything that could undermine unions. And he bragged that he kept unions out of North Carolina, or kept as many unions as possible out of North Carolina. That makes him an a-hole right there, just alone for me. That's just, but he was also one of the biggest homophobes, and he was a proponent of the Christian right, which was a social movement that was basically, I call it an Americanized Christian version of Sharia law, and what the Islamists want in the Middle East over there. That's pretty much what the Christian right, in its heyday, were trying to do here in the United States. Thankfully, thankfully, the Christian right thankfully they have been, they're politically irrelevant as far as trying to impose their repression. Oh, they still try. They're still trying. But unfortunately, they're a little more successful in having a listening ear of any Republican president in power at the moment. And they want the United States to have a war with Iran. That's their big thing at the moment. Trust me. Religious right is bad news. Well, Jesse Helms basically, he always found a hot button issue to get himself reelected. 1972 was Law and Order, and 1978 was the Panama Canal Treaty, when he was opposed to the U.S. relinquishing the Panama Canal. In 1984, it was the issue of Martin Luther King as a birthday holiday, um, and he ran against Jim Hunt. And in 1990 and in 1996, the hot button issue for Jesse Helms was that Harvey Gantt was a black man. I mean, that's pretty much what it was. Because again, I'll say it: Jesse Helms was a racist. You go around having that commercial of white hands balling up a piece of paper like it did in 1990. Oh, because they had to give a job to a black man. I mean, you know, um, Jesse Helms was the pits. Um, he was just a horrible, horrible human being. He was petty too. Like, for example, when Bill Clinton attempted to appoint Governor William Weld of Massachusetts as the ambassador of Mexico in 1997, and William Weld is a middle of the road, kind of a liberal Republican. Um, he donated money to Harvey Gantt, um, and Jesse Helms did not like that, and he was petty. Now, if you don't know who Harvey Gantt was, he was an architect, and he was also a mayor of Charlotte, North Carolina. African American man who ran twice for the U.S. Senate to try to unseat Jesse Helms. And he almost unseated Jesse Helms in 1990. He almost unseated him in 1996. Harvey Gantt was a good man. I met him when I was in the College Democrats at East Carolina. Um, he's not your typical um, you know corporate Democrat. He actually his politics seems to mimic that of someone like the late Paul Wellstone of Minnesota. Just according to some of the issues that he advocated, and it's a damn shame that Harvey Gantt never became senator, because I think that our first black president would have been Harvey Gantt, and as I said, Harvey Gantt was a decent man. I worked on his campaign in 1990 and 1996, and I look back, and The only thing I regret is seeing Jesse Helms being reelected twice. But anyhow, I do have an amusing story I'd like to share with you, and indirectly related to Jesse Helms. As Jesse Helms was stepping down in January 2003, Elizabeth Dole, the wife of um, former Senator Bob Dole of Kansas, she sought the Republican nomination because she's from North Carolina. She sought the Republican nomination for president. I mean, no, Republican nomination for the U.S. Senate, and Erskine Bowles was the Democratic challenger, and he was not really impressive, even though I voted for him in 2002. Um, I was eating dinner one day at the K&W in Wilson, North Carolina, and Bob Dole happened to walk in. And as he was walking in, he was trying to get people to support Lady Dole, and he happened to run across my table. And as he walked into my table, he was said, "Can I spare a moment of your time?" And I said, "Sure." So he talked about his wife and everything, and I pretty much said to Bob Dole, Senator Dole, I said, "I have nothing against you. I have nothing against your wife personally, but I will say this: I have a lot against Jesse Helms. I despise Jesse Helms, and whether it's Erskine Bowles or your wife winning in November, anything will be an improvement to Jesse Helms because Jesse Helms was he's an absolute wretched human being." And Bob Dole laughed, and he was kind of like, "Well, is there any concerns you have that I could convince you?" So he still tried to engage with me. I said, "Well, I told him where I stood. I told him, said I'm a strong union man. I support socialized medicine. I oppose this war that Jesse Helms voted for. That's going to get Americans killed needlessly. Um, I oppose capital punishment, and I support same-sex marriage, which was considered a really out there position in 2002." Bob Dole realized what a left wing nutcase I was, and he was just like, "Well, thank you for your time." I said, "Well, thank you, sir." And as I said, it's not you, and it's not your wife. I mean, but I don't vote Republican because of Jesse Helms. So anyway, I just thought you might find that amusing, as I was saying. But getting back to what I was talking about, I really, really did drift off the subject. The Jesse Helms Center at Chowan College, actually Chowan University, will be no more, no more. And I am so glad. Anything that can disrespect his legacy, I'm all for it. And while I do never, never, never wish death on a person, when Jesse Helms died, I was thinking to myself, well, I wish he could have stayed alive long enough for Barack Obama to see Barack Obama winning, because that would have been so perfect to see a black man win the presidency and see Jesse Helms go into a fit over that. Because he was turning in his grave when that happened. Anyhow, I'm going to leave y'all on this note. I'm glad what Chowan College did, Chowan University. Good for them. I'm Bernie Bro. If you like what you heard today, press like, subscribe. Remember algorithms. I'm trying to get up to 1,000 subscribers before before the year ends. So you know what to do. You know what to do. And I want to sit there and have another conversation with each and every one of you later on. Subscribe, like, share, tell everybody about this channel, and help it make it grow.